Hello guys, welcome back to Anime Moments. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Against the Gods based on novel. So let's start explanation. Just when Yunche had left Blue Fire City and departed towards Blue Wind Imperial City, the shadow of a person silently appeared in skies above the Burning Heaven clan. Fen Juechen had already left and a deathly silence hung in the air within the Burning Heaven clan. The grounds were left in ruins and strewn with the bodies of the dead. The surrounding air was overflowing with a rotten and charred stench, as though it had recently experienced a catastrophic calamity. Occasionally, one or two brave souls would approach the area in order to scout for news, though upon glimpsing the calamitous ruins of the Burning Heaven clan, their entire bodies would tremble in fear without exception, sweating profusely as they left hurriedly, and none dared to venture near the site. Alas, in the end I arrived a step too late. The shadow of the person in the sky gazed down upon the ruins and remained silent for a long time. At last, he let out a lingering gasp, causing an oppressing yet boundless aura to follow the sound of his gasp, discharging downwards from the sky, and enveloping the entire Burning Heaven clan. In a split second, the flow of air halted, causing even the blackened ashes in the sky to remain stagnant, as though time had become fixed in place. Such immense strength, if it was a righteous person, it would have been a boon to the Blue Wind Empire, yet unfortunately he possesses the heart of a fiend. With such a cruel slaughter that has befallen the entire Burning Heaven clan, it does constitute a threat to the Blue Wind Empire. And I will absolutely not stand by idly. His gaze shifted towards the north. He did not turn back towards the direction from whence he came. Instead, he flew up into the air, streaking towards the north, and in the blink of an eye, appeared countless kilometers away. Burning Heaven clan's base has already been reduced to a pile of ruins. The clan master, Grand Clan Master, the 33 pavilion masters, 27 elders, and the entirety of the clan's disciples, have all perished among the casualties. Not a single person survived, or managed to escape. The entire hierarchy of the clan have all been annihilated. Burning Heaven clan is utterly finished. Not only has the entire clan been annihilated, it has furthermore been destroyed to such an immeasurably miserable state. The malicious actions of that Yunche far outstrips what we imagined. The various external branches of the Burning Heaven clan in all the large cities have now received the news, and have almost all severed ties with the Burning Heaven clan at the first opportunity, immediately changing their names thereafter, for fear that Yunche's evil scheme would implicate them. After hearing this, Xiao Juetian's body experienced a grave chill. And after hearing the devastation that had befallen the Burning Heaven clan, even the gaps between his teeth felt a cold chill run through them. He was just like everyone. It never occurred to him that Yunche's retaliation would be merciless to such an extent. He originally thought that Yunche killing the clan master, as well as the rest of the core members, would be the limit of his reprisal against the Burning Heaven clan. Never did it occur to him, what Yunche had wrought, would be a retribution straight from hell. After personally hearing the truth of the matter, he was immensely shocked. Furthermore, after knowing everything, he undoubtedly felt an even greater sense of foreboding. Based on Yunche's personality, the events that transpired 3 years ago would not be so easily dispelled. However, this was a result of Xiao Kuanyun's own personal machinations. If he were to bear the pain of abandoning his sole progeny from his first wife, and take the initiative towards handling matters with Yunche, then the matter could be resolved peacefully. Moreover, reaching a compromise with someone capable of completely destroying the Burning Heaven clan was not something too humiliating. However, Grand Sect Master Xiao Wuqing had been domineering and uninhibited all his life. As someone who placed the glory of the sect above his own life, he would never allow such a thing to happen. He had instead chosen to let Grand Elder Xiao Wui bring along the Xiao sect's forbidden weapon, to aid the Burning Heaven clan in eliminating Yunche, and as a result, they had completely lost all chance at amicality. Sect Master, what should we do? The elderly man beside Xiao Juetian inquired. Our Xiao sect has never feared any external threats, yet this Yunche absolutely should not be underestimated. He has the capability to annihilate the entire Burning Heaven clan in just a matter of a few short days, which means there's no need to harp on it anymore. Xiao Juetian's chest heaved, as he grasped both his hands tightly, and duly announced, if Yunche was only powerful in strength, if he does come here, we can have a fight to the death with him. Yet, his methods are unexpectedly merciless and extreme. Merely just by kidnapping his two relatives, who were eventually safely rescued, led to the clan's entire destruction. There's not much to choose between the two when comparing the strength of the Xiao sect and the Burning Heaven clan. Second uncle has also fallen at the hands of Yunche. Him annihilating Burning Heaven clan means he certainly has the capability to annihilate our Xiao sect. This is a terrifying fact that is undeniable. All the pavilion masters completely quietened down, and the only sounds that could be heard were from the rapid beats of everyone's disordered hearts. We must absolutely not encounter the disaster that has befallen the Burning Heaven clan. Xiao Juetian turned his body, with his gaze fixed upon everyone. If Yunche arrives, do not engage him in battle at all costs. If we can sue for peace, even if we have to completely lose our dignity, we have to seek that end at all costs. If we do need to engage in combat in the end, then bring all the heaven-decimating bombs, and we shall go down in flames together with him. We absolutely cannot let our Xiao sect become the next Burning Heaven clan. Sect Master, there is actually no need to be so pessimistic. Xiao Boyan took a step forward, and said, Yunche's strength is indeed universally shocking, yet within the Blue Wind Empire, the person who can kill him does exist. And the person who has the ability to kill him, based on the recent report that just came in, as of last night, has left the Heavenly Sword Villa unaccompanied. Xiao Juetian's consciousness shook. You mean Sword Saint Ling Qianni? That's right. Xiao Boyan nodded his head. Ling Qianni has been upright and plain-spoken all his life, treating evil with utmost animosity. Moreover, he had once been friends with Fen Yijue. He had been in seclusion for close to 10 years, not treading into the mundane world. Yet he left the Heavenly Sword Villa in a hurry the previous night, most likely in an attempt to rescue the Burning Heaven clan that was in peril. Unfortunately, he was too late. If he had seen the devastation of the Burning Heaven clan, on one hand he would feel a sense of guilt, and on the other, feel an extreme rage against Yunche's fiendish methods. Both reasons would give sufficient cause to hunt down Yunche. Perhaps, Ling Qianni is already in the midst of hunting Yunche at the moment. Xiao Boyan's words brought much relief to Xiao Juetian's expression. He added in a low voice, very well, if the truth is as such, Yunche will undoubtedly die. Yunche suffered heavy wounds in his exchange with Fen Yijue before escaping, which is sufficient proof that his strength is not much stronger compared to Fen Yijue, yet even 10 Fen Yijues combined are no match for the Sword Saint. If the Sword Saint has truly left the Heavenly Sword Villa in order to aid the Burning Heaven clan's plight, then, he will definitely personally go forth to punish Yunche. News of Burning Heaven clan's destruction engulfed the entire Blue Wind Empire like a furious storm, sending the Blue Wind Empire to rise up in an earthquake-like uproar. This literally became the most shocking, most horrifying set of news that every Blue Wind citizen had heard in their lives. As they became more shocked than they had ever been in their lives, they were overwhelmed with horror and left incredulous. On one side was an aloof and remote, legendary clan that had stood tall for a millennium. On the other was a youth who was just 19 years of age. This 19-year-old youth, what he has wrought, literally became what could be compared to as a truth that defied the heavens, which was both hard to believe and accept. Regardless of how deep the desire for revenge, he had actually annihilated the entire hierarchy of the Burning Haven clan. Only a demon would resort to such methods and have such a vicious heart. How could it have been possibly done by a 19-year-old youth? Blue Wind Imperial City became bustling with excitement, as every corner was debating on the topic of the Burning Heaven clan's annihilation. The two words, Yunche, could be heard at all four corners. Furthermore, the external branch of the Burning Heaven clan within the Imperial City had already closed its doors off. At the main door, what previously was venerated as a treasure, the Burning Heaven sign, that was a symbol proved that they were recognized by the Burning Heaven clan had long been taken down and destroyed to pieces. In a short period of time after, it was replaced by a new sign that read, Esteemed Cloud Clan. This new clan name revealed the fear of Yunche and the need to be cordial with him. Yunche had been traveling on the Snow Phoenix Beast throughout his journey. As he flew over the skies above Blue Wind Imperial City, he captured the attention of countless pedestrians who stopped in their tracks and looked up, crying out in alarm. He continued flying into the skies above the Blue Wind Imperial Palace, and as he reached the moon-embracing palace within the Imperial Palace, he summoned the Snow Phoenix back and gracefully landed from the skies. Ah, who is it? Just as he landed, a female's astonished voice cried out behind him. Yunche turned his body around, and saw a pale-faced palace maid. Ah. Young Master Yun. The first time Yunche came to the moon-embracing palace, he saw this very palace maid, thus it was natural that he would be recognized by her. The moment she saw his face, she cried out in a voice that was 3 times louder than her astonished voice previously. The expression on her face was a mix of shock, admiration, and also what looked obviously like fear. To slaughter over 70,000 people within the Burning Heaven clan through such merciless methods, made the bodies of everyone overwhelmed with shock as their whole body trembled in fear at the thought of it. Yunche took in the entirety of the palace maid's expression. He nodded, and he expressed with a hint of impatience, "Where is the princess, her royal highness?" You seem to be a bit afraid of me." "No, not really, it's not true." Under Yun Che's direct gaze, the palace maid at that moment started babbling incoherently. Facing the character in front of her eyes whose exploits have become legendary, her natural instincts were frozen in fright. She didn't dare to directly look at Yun Che any further, urgently looked towards the moon-embracing palace and shouted, "Your Highness, young Master Yun. Young Master Yun has arrived." Following the palace maid's cry out, a figure dressed in a light green long dress with a delicate and exquisite shadow like a swiftly flying butterfly rushed out. Upon seeing Yun Che, her entire smart-looking countenance was overwhelmed with pleasant surprise, and from her mouth came a voice of utmost joy, "Lit Che." Xiao Lingxi threw herself forward, and swooped into Yun Che's embrace, hugging him tightly. In his embrace she could hardly contain her happiness and was jumping with joy. "You finally returned. Ah? Have you suffered any injuries? Did you hurt yourself anywhere?" Being able to meet Xiao Lingxi there was of no surprise nor odd to Yun Che. Before he had arrived at the imperial palace, he already had at least 70% certainty and conviction that Ling Jie would bring Xiao Lai and Xiao Lingxi to safety at King Yu's side. He held Xiao Lingxi's waist and laughed as he said, "Don't worry, I do not have a single wound on myself. If you do not believe my words, I will strip off my clothes for your inspection later." You. Xiao Lingxi used her hands and lightly pinched him, pouting her lips as she said, "Humph, you're teasing me again." However, she could only maintain her feigned anger for a short while before it was replaced by joy. "I always knew you would keep to your words. We've arrived here long ago. Dad and I were worried to death over these few days. However, it was fortuitous that the imperial palace had many interesting places, and also the princess herself had accompanied me, allowing me to play here happily." It was at this moment that King Yu appeared, dressed from head to toe in royal garments, looking splendid beyond comparison. Looking at the two in each other's embrace, she laughed lightly and walked over. "Junior brother Yun, you have finally returned. Sorry for worrying senior sister." Yun Che lightly smiled as he said, "And to trouble you with taking care of my grandfather and little aunt. Your kinsmen are of course also my kinsmen." After Kang Yu finished her sentence, she suddenly felt a sense of obliquity, as her snow-white countenance flushed red, and became flustered, and she started a new topic. "Grandfather Xiao is currently at my father's side, and with Uncle Dongfang's protection, he is perfectly safe and sound. That said, have you seen Chu Yuchen already?" Yun Che's breathing slowed, as he shook his head lightly. "No, she wasn't at Frozen Cloud Asgard, and no one has any idea as to her whereabouts." Kang Yu's pink lips slightly parted, and she added softly in a consoling tone, "Do not worry, the fairy of frozen beauty has the strength of a throne. Within the blue wind, no one can harm her. The Blue Wind Empire's domain is small, you will surely find her in no time. I will also muster the entire palace's resources to aid in the search." That said, has the Burning Heaven clan really been annihilated by you? Mn Yun Che nodded his head without hesitation, because they had provoked what they should never have provoked. "This matter, even if the entire world bears a grudge or admonishes me, I will not feel any regret. Senior sister, little aunt, do you too blame me?" Kang Yu's expression instantly became extremely conflicted. Just when she was about to speak, she had instead heard Xiao Lingxi, who lifted her face. "Even though taking lives is wrong, if it was little Che, the people he has killed are definitely those that should be killed, who are bad people. As such, I do not blame you." Xiao Lingxi was a person who had never before taken a life, and even had limited experience interacting with other people. Her temperament was as emollient as the leaves and flowers. Yet these words which were said were spoken as it should be by rights, filled with self-confidence and justice. Tens of thousands of lives suffered a massacre, yet she stood resolute. No, one should say that she naturally believed that Yun Che was right. Kang Yu could not help but questioned, "You, why would you think so?" "Because little Che is the best person in this entire world." Xiao Lingxi blinked her bright pupils that resembled black glorious gemstones, and answered without a hint of hesitation. In that moment, Kang Yu stared with her gaze transfixed. All of a sudden, she immediately understood why Yun Che had toiled so hard these past 3 years, and why he had borne a burning rage that led to the annihilation of the Burning Heaven clan after she was abducted. His relationship with Xiao Lingxi was long past one of trust and reliance, it was one that practically had one's life integrated into the other's. Especially with the way Xiao Lingxi treated Yun Che, even if she felt that the entire world was lying to her, she would wholeheartedly put her trust in Yun Che. Even if the entire world treated him as a demon, she would still believe that he was the most kind-hearted person in the world. This deep and mysterious, yet subtle feelings, caused Kang Yu to sincerely feel envious. She knew, in this world, there would never be someone who could take Xiaoling's place in Yun Che's heart. Kang Yu lightly smiled. Under Xiaoling's gaze, those little complicated feelings that had dwelled in her heart disappeared without a trace. She looked at Yun Che, and saw a man that made her feel immense pride. In 2 short years, he had progressed from a frail youth, whom had his life threatened by the Xiao sect that hunted him, to a person capable of loftily holding up the entire Blue Wind Empire. It was at this moment an apathetic and serious voice suddenly rang out from the distant skies. Yun Che, because of your personal grievance, you would go so far as to annihilate the entire Burning Heaven clan. Your methods are merciless and your heart is malicious. Both the gods and people are outraged, and you deserve heavenly punishment to wipe you out. An old man like me will seek justice for the heavens on this day, and personally send you on the road to the Yellow Springs to pay your debt. Show yourself to me. This voice seemingly transmitted from across the sky, echoing through the imperial city's every street, every corner, and caused the entire city to fall into complete silence. Everyone raised their heads up high, shocked by the scene of an empty sky, and attempted to locate the origin of that voice. Ah? What was that sound? What he shouted seemed to be for little Che. Xiao Lingxi turned her body and looked around. The words said by the voice caused her to feel a sense of panic. This person, who can he be? Kang Yu hurriedly grabbed onto Yun Che's arm, as her face revealed panic. In spite of Yun Che's annihilation of the Burning Heaven clan, and intimidating the entire realm, for a person to rush over to seek punishment on him, his strength was definitely on an extremely frightening level. HMPH, Yun Che snorted indifferently, and very quickly, confirmed the location of the owner of the voice. He nonchalantly said to Kang Yu and Xiao Lingxi, "It seems like a small nuisance has arrived. Give me a moment, I will take care of it right away." Just he was about to move, Jasmine's voice rang out in his head, "Do not go over there. If you do, that will be seeking death." What? Yun Che froze in his steps, as his eyebrows furrowed. This fellow is at the 6th level of the Emperor Profound Realm. Furthermore, he has reached this stage for a long amount of time. His profound strength is intense and carries an incredibly sharp aura. Jasmine cautioned, "Never would I expect that on this land, there is actually someone within the middle levels of the Emperor Profound Realm. With your current strength, you wouldn't even be considered an opponent to him." Middle levels of the Emperor Profound Realm? Yun Che glanced to his south and his face tensed up. Hearing Jasmine's words, Yun Che immediately thought of one person. At the same time, he also remembered Ling Jie's warning. Blue Wind Empire's top profound practitioner, Ling Qianni. Within the Blue Wind Empire, only Ling Qianni would possess such strength. Ling Jie's initial warning had come true. Not only that, it was even more severe than what he had warned. Not only did Ling Qianni intervene, he'd even personally came to the Imperial City and told everyone he was going to take Yun Che's life. Ling Qianni, the previous Villa Master of Heavenly Sword Villa. He was the most pinnacle of legends within Blue Wind Empire, widely recognized as the strongest person within the country. Since young, he had been well known to all and had an insane love for the sword. 20 years ago, he was already the strongest within the country. His profound strength and swordsmanship had already reached a level unattainable by the masses. Until today, he had not appeared in public for the past 20 years. However, Blue Wind Empire continued spreading his legend, and the young profound practitioners all grew up respecting him from the stories they have heard. Today, this legendary figure had appeared with the sole objective of killing Yun Che. Only Yun Che could obtain such a prestige. When Ling Qianni transmitted his voice, he and Yun Che was already relatively close. Yun Che could tell that his was currently at a place within 2 kilometers from the front of the palace. He'd even suspected that Ling Qianni had already known where he was, but didn't want to attack him in the palace. No matter what, Heavenly Sword Villa and the Blue Wind Imperial family were very close at the time of their origins. Until eliminating Burning Heaven clan, he did not appear. I always thought that my worries were unnecessary. Little did I expect him to finally appear now. Yun Che told Jasmine, however, since he is already so close, and even transmitted his speech to the whole city to force me to appear. Shrinking away is not something I, Yun Che, would do. HMPH, I expected you to say that. Jasmine replied in disdain, "If you don't want to escape, you could always rush in and fight him. Even though it is impossible to win with the protection of the Dragon God's bloodline, it wouldn't be that easy for him to kill you either. However, if you don't know when to retreat, death is all but assured." "I understand." My life is more precious than any gold or silver. I would never allow myself to die here meaninglessly. Since he's already here, let's go meet the famous #1 in Blue Wind Empire. Little Chan, let's go. Carrying Yunche, the snow phoenix let out a long cry and flew directly towards Ling Qianni. Just as the snow phoenix lifted off the ground, a sturdy aura fixated strongly on Yunche. What? That person is Ling Qianni? The legendary sword saint? Since this was the imperial city, among the older generation, many have seen the former glory of the sword saint. Therefore, when Ling Qianni appeared in the middle of the imperial city, some of the aged shouted his name in shock. Sword saint? Is that the legendary sword saint? Oh my heavens! I'm actually witnessing Blue Wind Empire's legend here. No wonder someone directly approached with the intent to kill Yunche. Other than Sword Saint, who would have such strength and aura? Yunche's in trouble now. No matter how overpowered he is, he wouldn't stand a chance against Sword Saint. If Yunche is smart enough, he should hide immediately. It's been said that the Sword Saint has not cared about worldly affairs for 20 years. Not only did this incident of the destruction of the Burning Heaven clan shake the whole Blue Wind Empire, it even alerted him. It has also been said that the Sword Saint has a personality as straight as a blade. He destroys evil without hesitation and also used to have very close relationship with Burning Heaven clan's Grand Clan Master, Fen Yijue. Since Yunche eliminated Burning Heaven clan this time, it wouldn't be weird that he personally took action this time. In the air 2 kilometers in front of the Imperial Palace, a black figure floated there. His black clothes were making noises in the strong wind. Below him, more and more people gathered and chatter surrounded the whole place. Many people rushed here quickly to admire the figure of the legendary sword saint. Suddenly, a long cry was heard from the palace and a white figure swiftly bolted past, stopping in front of the black figure. They stared at each other. Oh? It's Yunche. He was actually in the palace. And he even appeared. Although his strength was sufficient to eliminate the Burning Heaven clan, facing the Sword Saint, who is fully intent on killing him, he actually dared to appear. This is going to be a good show. Ling Qianni looked to be around 40 years old. Even though he was the Heavenly Sword Villa Master, Ling Yifeng's father, he looked to be slightly younger than Ling Yifeng. He looked largely similar to Ling Yifeng. However, the sword aura on him was several times sharper than Ling Yifeng. Ling Qianni turned his attention to Yunche, and at that moment, merely his gaze caused Yunche have the scary feeling that he had been stabbed several times. Yunche? Ling Qianni spoke slowly, his voice calm like water. Junior Yunche greets Senior Ling. Able to meet the legendary sword saint, Junior must count himself fortunate. Yunche replied respectfully. You're so young and your profound strength is only in the 7th level of the Earth Profound Realm, yet you're able to eliminate the entire Burning Heaven clan. Such achievements at such a young age, you far exceed me. Ling Qianni complimented coldly. Being able to make the sword saint say the 4 words, you far exceed me, Yunche was definitely the first. However, after complimenting him, all he had was a cold killing intent. With your talent, you could originally become a genius in Blue Wind Empire, become the talent of this generation. You could achieve things that even my Heavenly Sword Villa cannot fathom. If you were to represent Blue Wind Empire in the Profound Sky 7 Nation Ranking Tournament, you might be able to change Blue Wind Empire's 1,000-year shame and even obtain glory. However, you're too cruel and ruthless. Because of personal grudges, you actually massacred all 73,600 people of Burning Heaven clan. Such actions are truly hair-raising. Yunche smiled slightly and replied, Senior is too harsh. Although I'm not any kind person, I'm definitely not the cruel and ruthless that you mention. Even though I killed many, not one of them is without reason. I eliminated Burning Heaven clan only because they crossed the line. They deserve it. Also, this allowed me to take this chance to warn anyone who dares to touch my family members. However, this is between me and Burning Heaven clan. How does it concern you? HMPH, what happened at Burning Heaven clan would probably anger even the deities. You're a vile and vicious beast that deserves divine retribution. Everyone has the right to kill you. Me killing you is in the name of the heavens. In the name of heaven? Ha 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 ha. Yunche laughed loudly, as his voice suddenly turned cold. Even if my interaction with the Burning Heaven clan wasn't long, I could strongly feel the despicable behavior of the Burning Heaven clan's disciples. Such a clan did countless of despicable acts over the past thousands of years. There were much more than 73,600 people who were being bullied by them due to their influence. People even died directly or indirectly due to them. At those times, where were you? Why did you not punish them in the name of the heavens? Lin Qianli suddenly became dumbstruck. I hear that Heavenly Sword Villa and Blue Wind Imperial Palace were very close during their origins. Your first Villa Master and Blue Wind Imperial Palace's first Emperor were sworn brothers. When they initially created the Heavenly Sword Villa and the Blue Wind Imperial Palace respectively, they swore to stick by each other no matter what happened, supporting one another. However, Heavenly Sword Villa prospered daily, and sought mighty Heavenly Sword region for its backing. On the other hand, the Blue Wind Imperial family suffered through this time. Until today, it is still plagued by dangers. Even the Xiao sect and Burning Heaven clan took advantage of the situation to enter the power struggle. The current emperor of Blue Wind Empire was nearly assassinated as well. With the influence of the Heavenly Sword Villa, there is no way you did not know of the crisis within the Blue Wind Imperial family. However, why did your Heavenly Sword Villa not intervene at that time? You said you wanted to punish people in the names of the heavens, yet why do you not possess even the most basic form of moral and justice? Instead, I had to intervene to save the Emperor's life. If I did not intervene, the Emperor would probably be at his last breath already. If that had happened, how are you going to face your ancestors in your death? Yunche pointed at Lin Qianli and said, that in the name of the heavens that you mentioned sounds like a joke to me. You have no right to scold me. If not for the title of Sword Saint that you hold, I wouldn't even be interested in looking at you at all. Instead, me eliminating the entire Burning Heaven clan is not only to quell my hatred, but also truly in the name of the heavens. Lin Qianli originally came to demand justice. However, facing Yunche, who massacred the Burning Heaven clan, he, who stood on the side of justice, had originally wanted to punish Yunche in the face of the public. However, he did not expect to be chided by Yunche in public. Furthermore, Yunche's words were all straight to the point and struck onto his weaknesses. Lin Qianli did not know how to reply him. He, who had originally come to act in the name of the heavens, had now turned into a heartless and immoral person. From the reasons listed, the people gathered all seemed to agree with Yunche. Especially those who were often bullied by powerful clans, those who were angry, but dared not to complain. Yunche's words were heartfelt. Those who were bullied by Burning Heaven clan or their outer branches had their fists clenched as their emotions surged. The admiration that had for the Sword Saint had visibly dimmed. Lin Qianli sighed loudly, not only is your talent amazing and your strength earth-shattering, you also have a glib tongue. However, no matter how flowery your speech is, you are unable to hide your blood debt. For the 70,000 souls that died in your hands, I shall deliver judgment with my sword. No matter what reason, you shall not avoid death. Ha! Yunche laughed coldly. You think that I wasted my saliva talking to you in order to get you to let me off? You're overestimating yourself. Just you alone do not have the qualifications to make me feel scared. You definitely lack the qualifications to kill me. Facing someone that wanted to kill him, Yunche was no longer respectful. He waved his arm and a 3-meter-long dragon bolt appeared in his hand, causing a stir. Today, I shall measure you, Sword Saint. Let me see whether your way is able to shake my way. Yunche descended from the snow phoenix and opened burning heart. The aura within him exploded immediately. He slashed Dragon Bolt from midair towards Lin Qianli with enough might to shake the heavens. Lin Qianli looked up slowly as a green longsword appeared silently in his hands. The sword had no shine and its sharpness could not even be told from looking at it. However, in the hands of the Sword Saint, it released an immense pressure. When receiving the explosive blow from Yunche, Lin Qianli did not have any intention of avoiding it. He merely slowly stabbed out. That's right, he slowly stabbed out. No matter Yunche or anyone below, even a nascent profound practitioner could clearly see the movement of the sword. However, it was clearly a slow stab, yet it seemed to have leapt through space and even time. Half a breath before, it was still 90 meters away. Half a breath later, it slowly stabbed towards Yunche's chest. A strong sense of danger suddenly attacked him. Without warning, an earth-shattering pressure soon appeared in front of the defenseless Yunche. He soon felt intense pain from his chest. Yunche was stunned for a moment. Without thinking, he executed a Star God's broken shadow to avoid it and rolled onto the ground. Upon landing onto the ground, his chest was already filled with blood. 2 streaks of long sword cuts half a foot long were deeply etched on it. Yunche had no clue how the sword had managed to cut him. Just now, that was dimensional interference. His sword intent is already strong enough to pierce through space. Even though it's the lowest grade and barely considered an entry-level space interference, it is more than enough against you. Jasmine coldly said, against him. You have no chance of victory. Space intervention? Interesting. Yunche's finger gently touched his chest as he quickly stopped the blood from flowing out of the wound. The larger the stepping stone, the wider the world one gets to see. In this world, one can actually stab through space using sword intent. No wonder he is known as the strongest man in Blue Wind Empire, the Sword Saint. However, your 2 slashes only gave me 2 wounds that neither hurt nor itch. It wasn't much. Though Yunche did not speak loudly, Ling Qianli still managed to hear everything clearly. He did not say anything and merely took a step forward in midair. His green longsword slowly pointed forward. Instantly, a 2-meter-long sword beam burst out from the tip of the sword. Then, it instantly split into 2, 5, 10 numerous sword beams. By the time the sword beams were close to Yunche, they had already completely filled the skies and spaces around him and completely sealed him in. Yunche lifted his face, then looked down, and furiously slashed Dragonfold downwards. Overlord's Fury. The sound of an angry dragon's roar rang loudly from within the green sword's formation, blasting a 3-meter-wide hole among the sword beams. With a star god's broken shadow, Yunche escaped from the hole and struck straight towards Ling Qianli. Ling Qianli couldn't help but feel admiration as his own sword formation was broken so easily. However, he soon recovered his indifference and gently pointed his sword outwards. Ding! The tip of the green sword and the thick edge of Dragonfold clashed together. Under the heavy pressure of Dragonfold, the green sword instantly bent into a crescent shape. Yunche knitted his brows as he continued using strength. Suddenly, he felt an overwhelmingly frightening strength attacking from his front. The bent sword suddenly straightened, forcefully striking back against Dragonfold. Yunche's arms seemed as though they were struck by a heavy hammer, and they turned numb immediately. Dragonfold was nearly disarmed from him as his entire body was knocked backwards with the sound of the collision. Bang! Yunche harshly fell onto the ground, causing large cracks on the ground below him. At the same time, Dragonfold finally flew out from his hands. There were plenty of wounds on his right arm and they bled profusely. His internal organs were in bad condition and the pain was unbearable, as though he had been cracked into pieces. The person in front of him was the person recognized by the masses as the strongest within Blue Wind Empire. Yunche obviously would not underestimate him. However, only when Yunche had actually faced him did he realize how strong he truly was. He was much stronger than Yunche had expected. In strength alone, although the gap between Yunche, who had strength equivalent to that of someone in the 4th level of the Emperor Profound Realm, and Ling Qianli, who was in the 6th level of the Emperor Profound Realm, was huge, it was not too exaggerating. However, the realm in which Ling Qianli was in was completely beyond Yunche. He was at a level that Yunche was unable to comprehend even now. His sword intent was overbearingly strong and ever-changing. It could be sharp enough to cut through anything, then also as vast as the sea. It could even interfere with space, rendering opponents unable to defend or prepare against. Yunche was completely suppressed in his exchange with him. Even before his Dragonfold had touched Ling Qianli's clothes, he had already been wounded several times. But how could the arrogance carved in Yunche's bones allow him to lose just like that? He stood up and stretched out his blood-stained right arm. Dragonfold then flew up by itself and returned into his hands. Yunche stared coldly at the Sword Saint in midair. Not only was there no fear coming from him, his intent to battle and anger were enhanced several folds. Not bad at all. You actually forced me to use 70% of my strength to defeat you. It's no wonder you were able to destroy Burning Heaven Clan. Ling Qianli slowly descended from midair and the green sword in his hands flashed with a cold light that was fearful to look at. Such a talent, yet his soul is evil. It's such a waste that I have to eliminate you today. The voice of Ling Qianli when he passed his judgment was low yet impactful. His unusually clear voice allowed half of the Imperial City to hear him. As he finished speaking, his sword's intent surged and the green sword of his suddenly glowed with 7 colors as an overwhelmingly frightening sword's force enveloped Yunche. Suddenly, a green figure rushed out from the Imperial Palace. The figure was that of a flying fierce zephyr bird. On its back was a youth with a face filled with worry who shouted anxiously from a distance away, "Grandpa, stop!" Ling Qianli's sword stopped in midair as his gaze wavered, looking at the youth who suddenly appeared. "Jia? What are you doing here?" The fierce zephyr bird swept forward quickly, bringing Ling Jie in between Ling Qianli and Yun Che. Ling Jie wiped the sweat on his head in one motion and nervously placed his hands together, begging, "Grandpa, you can't kill him. I've known him for a very long time. He is definitely not the type of evil person Grandpa speaks of." Ling Qianli did not withdraw his sword, and the 7 colors on his sword glowed exceptionally beautifully, causing one to shudder at the same time. "Instead of obediently staying in the villa, you have come here to protect this evil kid? He massacred more than 70,000 people. Just this sin is unredeemable no matter how many times he dies." Ling Jie shook his head strongly and pleaded, "You're wrong, Grandpa. Although him killing the entire Burning Heaven clan is a little overboard. But I'm more aware of the entire situation than you, Grandpa. It was Burning Heaven clan who had been provoking him all along, and even forced him into near-death situation several days ago. He was forced to an extent where he could no longer tolerate it, and therefore eliminated the Burning Heaven clan in anger. HMPH. Killing an entire clan over a personal grudge. Even if half of the Burning Heaven clan are evil, wouldn't the other half, that were innocent, have died for nothing? You are actually protecting such an evil person? I'm truly disappointed. Quickly stand down." Ling Qianli had supreme authority in Heavenly Sword Villa, and although Ling Jie was a little frivolous and often ignored what his father, Ling Yifeng, said, he did not dare to act presumptuously in front of Ling Qianli. His every phrase was like an immovable mountain pressing on Ling Jie, making him so nervous he could barely breathe. His face was now flushed red as he gritted his teeth and replied stubbornly, "Grandpa. He is the big boss that I recognize and the only person in this world I truly admire. If he was indeed the person that Grandpa think he is, how would I willingly recognize such a person as my boss? Grandpa, I beg you to please stop. Don't kill him. If you are bent on killing him, you'd have to kill me first." "You?" Ling Qianli stared at him, slightly swinging the sword in his hands. Yun Che's expression was stiff. Never did he expect that Ling Jie would say such a thing in front of Ling Qianli. All of these had happened because of Yun Che. Ling Jie ignored all consequences and used his life to protect Yun Che. This made Yun Che exceptionally thankful. However, how could he allow his own matters to affect the relationship between Ling Jie and his own grandpa? He walked forward a few steps and placed a reassuring hand on Ling Jie's shoulder, and said smilingly, "I will forever remember you standing up for me. However, that's already enough. This is my own matter and I will settle it myself." Ling Jie turned around and looked at him extremely worriedly, "But don't worry," Yun Che said straightforwardly, "even though your grandfather is frighteningly strong, it's still not that easy for him to kill me. If my life ceased so easily, I wouldn't be alive now. Stand down, I assure you everything will be all right. You being here would make matters more troublesome and also difficult for me and your grandfather." Yun Che's words always seemed to possess some sort of power that made Ling Jie believe in him. He hesitated for a moment before nodding and retreating slowly. However, his eyes continued to nervously stare at both of them. At this point, the 7-colored sword on Ling Qianli's sword finally burst forth. A bright and beautiful mirage appeared in midair, shining straight at Yun Che. Yun Che looked up and in his eyes, a savage madness flashed past. Purgatory. Yun Che's eyes instantly turned scarlet and the phoenix flame within him ignited ferociously, savagely burning under the encouragement of the purgatory state which made it seem like he had turned into a bright sun. Boom! The sound of a frightening explosion came from Yun Che's surroundings as the strength in his body surged tremendously before gathering at both his arms, causing it to instantly grow to thrice its size. The sudden surge in profound strength caused the surrounding air to berserkly flow, tremoring space, destroying sky, decimating earth. The moment Dragon Fault struck, the surrounding space distorted largely. Even observers who were several kilometers away all held their breaths. It was as though all the air in the world had been distorted at that moment. Once again, Yun Che had executed the most frightening move he possessed. The strength of the Sword Saint was beyond his expectations and his chance of victory would only lie in this attack that he had put his all in. Facing this attack, Ling Qianli's expression changed. As the strongest person in Blue Wind Empire, Ling Qianli possessed strength unrivaled within the whole empire. There was no one in Blue Wind whose profound strength could exceed his. However, the strength that had exploded from Yun Che's sword had obviously exceeded even Ling Qianli's limits. It was a frightening strength that he could not muster even if he used his all. In that instant, Yun Che seemed like a massive primordial dragon in his eyes. 19 years old. 7th level of the Earth Profound Realm. How could he have such explosive power? In his shock, all the muscles in Ling Qianli's body swelled. He had released all 100% of his power, without restraint. He adopted a weird stance and all his body had now released a milky white glow. Bang! The crisp noise was exceptionally piercing and the massive sword's intent within the 7-colored rainbow sword beam was easily shattered by the berserk power of Dragon Fault. The strength of the evil god and the heavy sword instantly filled the air like a massive roaring dragon rushing through the skies and completely swallowed Ling Qianli. Just as it had come into contact with the milky glow, an eerie roar could be heard by the entire city as it completely overshadowed the involuntary screams of the masses present. Facing this frightening strength, even Ling Qianli had chosen to use all of his strength to protect himself. However, when the strength of destroying sky decimating earth collided against the Sword Saint's protective strength, it was suppressed by the true god's law. Under this double suppression, strength was established instantly and the creamy glow was quickly destroyed and engulfed. Within 3 breaths of time, the glow had already lost half its brightness and was near to collapse. At this time, 2 awe-inspiring sword beam flashed past Ling Qianli's eyes. Heavenly Sword Domain. Ling Qianli opened both his arms and thousands of swords appeared in midair, invoking a massive sword typhoon which began to wildly cut apart the strength of destroying sky decimating earth. The Heavenly Sword Domain was a supreme domain that belonged to a Heavenly Sword Throne. This was a type of purely attack-oriented domain, an advanced version of the Heavenly Sword Elementary Domain, the 10,000 Sword Domain. Similarly, it was also recognized as the strongest domain, and the one and only without rival, in Blue Wind Empire. The moment the Heavenly Sword Domain was released within the Blue Wind Realm, it could be said that not a single person could resist it. Ling Qianli and Yun Che had only just begun exchanging blows, yet, he was actually forced to use the Heavenly Sword Domain. To him, this could be said to be the first in his lifetime. However, the amount of strength Yun Che suddenly unleashed was too overly frightening. If he did not use his own strongest domain skill, with this one strike from Yun Che, he could have suffered heavy injuries right there and then. This was Yun Che's 3rd time using destroying sky decimating earth. The first time was when he defeated Xie Qingyu, whose abilities far surpassed his back then. The second time was when he killed one of 2 great Emperor Profound practitioners while injuring the other. And this time, he forced the incredibly strong Blue Wind Empire's #1 expert to the point where he had no choice but to use his full strength. Boom, 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 boom. Deafening explosions rang wildly, to the point where even space seemed to cave in. The power of the heavy sword was as violent as lightning. As the countless of sword beams tore through dimensions, the sword beams shattered bit by bit, while the violent power also began to weaken layer by layer. The Sword Saint was at the exact center of the windstorm, yet his entire body did not move an inch, as though he was a boulder that had lasted 10 millennia. Just at this moment, his eyes suddenly opened up glaringly. More than 70% of the sword beams exploded, forming numerous thousands of sword intent vortexes, spreading out and swallowing all of the surrounding violent profound energy. Boom! Following the last explosive sound, the energy of destroying sky decimating earth dispersed completely. The Sword Saint was still standing at his original spot. There was not even a slight change in his position, there was not a single trace of injury on his body, and even his hair and clothes were not damaged in the least. However, this definitely did not mean that Ling Qianli was very relaxed. The creamy radiance on the exterior of his body had completely disappeared, and his energy aura had been weakened by a large degree as well. Furthermore, the Heavenly Sword Domain, which was originally invincible in the Blue Wind, was about 90% destroyed. Only a few final hundreds of sword beams remained out of the initial numerous thousands. Ling Jie, who was at the back, was stunned senseless at his spot. This was the first time he saw Yun Che revealing his hand after separating from him for about a year. He clearly understood that the strength of Yun Che, who was capable of exterminating the entire Burning Heaven clan by himself, must have already reached an extremely terrifying height. However, Ling Jie had never thought that he would be terrifying to such an extent. He was actually able to force his grandfather to use the Heavenly Sword Domain, and had even destroyed the Heavenly Sword Domain to such an extent. If he had not seen it personally, he definitely would not have believed it. Even in Heavenly Sword Villa, no one would have ever believed it either. Looking at Ling Qianli, who was completely unharmed, Yun Che's gaze suddenly sank. Ling Qianli looked calm on the exterior, however, his heart was surging like the waves of a stormy sea. In order to block that one strike from Yun Che, his Heavenly Sword Domain was close to collapsing completely. As for his profound energy, a total of 40% of it had been consumed. He blocked one of his opponent's strike, yet it had consumed a total of 40% of his energy. To him, this was basically something he could never imagine. Hence, at the same time, the killing intent in his heart rose explosively once again. With profound strength at the earth-profound realm, he was able to possess such terrifying fighting potential, and adding his growth rate, once he were to reach the sky-profound realm, it would be impossible for he himself to match up against him. Within the blue wind, there would not be anyone else that could act against him either. No matter what, on this day, he had to kill him right now. In contrast, Yunche, who had forcefully opened purgatory, and had forcefully unleashed destroying sky decimating earth, his energy consumption had exceeded more than 80%. However, he did not keep any reserves. He had kept a bit of energy to escape. Fiend, die? Yunche's energy aura had weakened by a large amount. Ling Qianli clearly understood that one blow from Yunche earlier was definitely a desperate gamble, and currently, he was nothing more than a burnt-out lamp, with almost no strength left. With a loud roar, the numerous hundreds of swords behind him flew out, and then, they swiftly gathered, forming a gold heavenly sword that was 30 meters long, and 3 meters wide. Carrying an unmatched sharpness that looked down upon the world, it flew towards Yunche. Grandpa! Stop! Before Ling Jie could wake up from his shock, he suddenly saw that terrifying heavenly sword that came from his grandfather. His face instantly paled, as he flew over with all his might. However, how could his speed be compared to the speed of the heavenly sword? Regarding his loud cries, Ling Qianli basically did not care at all. The speed of the heavenly sword had instead suddenly accelerated and came crashing down. Boss! Ling Jie's pupils shrank as he roared out with a hoarse voice. As long one had a slight bit amount of profound energy, it would be possible to clearly sense that Yunche's current energy aura had already weakened by an extremely huge degree. In his current state, he probably might not even be able to block a single regular sword strike from Ling Qianli, let alone this terrifying heavenly sword. And this heavenly sword was the true core existence of the heavenly sword domain. After the countless sword beams shatter all of the opponent's attacks and defenses, at the end, they would form a sword which covered the heavens, bestowing the opponent a strike of despair. Although only 10% remained of the might of this heavenly sword due to the collapsed heavenly sword domain, it was still completely enough to completely disintegrate Yunche in his current state. A change suddenly occurred in the light above. Yunche raised his head and saw the eye-piercing golden light that covered the skies and blocked out the sun. The unmatched aura that was contained within the sword beam was so strong that it caused his body to feel as though it was being pressed by a 10-ton boulder, and it seemed as though he was unable to move. Sealing cloud-locking sun. With the heavenly sword sinking down, Yunche straightened his body, and instantly unleashed the defensive barrier that came from the evil god. Boom! The heavenly sword struck onto the sealing cloud-locking sun protective screen. Boundless sword intent accompanied the sword beams that filled the sky as it was released wildly, as though a golden sun had exploded on the surface. The heavenly sword pushed inwards bit by bit, however, it was unable to break through that layer of evil god barrier. It could only push Yunche's body as he withdrew step by step. Cling tilde. Cling tilde. A crack appeared on both the heavenly sword and above the evil god barrier at the same time. The two cracks spread rapidly. One crack encompassed the entire blade of the sword, while the other crack encompassed the entire barrier. Bang! Seemingly at the same time, the evil god barrier and the heavenly sword burst out completely, turning into fragments of energy which filled the sky. Yunche's body was pushed numerous tens of meters away, and the moment he landed, his body flashed with a star god's broken shadow, and avoided all of the aftermaths from the exploded heavenly sword. Not a single strand of hair on his body had been harmed. However, his energy aura had once again weakened. The moment he stopped his body, he was gasping huge breaths. Under the heavenly sword, Yunche was actually completely unharmed. Shock once again surfaced on Ling Qianli's face. However, his reaction was incomparably swift. With a wave of his arm, in an instant, the energy fragments exploded off from the heavenly sword once again formed into several dozens of golden sword beams. As they emitted out shrills from tearing space, they flew towards Yunche, who had just landed. Yunche had just took on the heavenly sword, and to dodge the aftermath, he had used Star God's broken shadow. Currently, his energy was depleted, and before he could put in any force, the gold sword beams had seemingly followed after him. The moment the tip of his foot landed the ground, the gold sword beams were already less than a meter away from him, leaving him with no possibilities of dodging. However, with his dragon god's physique, it was basically impossible for sword beams hastily gathered by the sword saint to penetrate his body. At the very most, it would leave dozens of wounds that were neither light nor heavy. Just when he clenched his teeth tightly, preparing himself to take on the sword beams with his body, An ice-cold blue light suddenly showered down from the sky above and the surrounding space instantly condensed as well. When the flying sword beams were but a few centimeters away from Yunche, they suddenly stopped there, and then, very quickly, their color turned from gold into an even deeper blue. Afterwards, they shattered with a crisp-sounding bang, turning into fine ice blue fragments. These ice blue fragments naturally fell, but before they landed on the ground, they had already completely disappeared in midair. This is. Yunche hurriedly raised his head and looked towards the high skies. Ling Qian's brows furrowed greatly, letting out a growl. Frozen cloud arts? No, wait. Could it be? That devilish ice blue color, and that form of mysterious and strong aura that did not belong to the frozen cloud arts, caused Ling Qian to suddenly recall something. At that very instant, his facial expression suddenly changed, and he hurriedly turned to look towards the high skies. A few hundred meters high in the sky, a light blue figure was floating there. Her appearance, at that very moment, masked over all of the brilliance between heaven and earth. The moment people saw her, they were no longer able to shift their gaze away, as though they had seen a goddess who had descended from the heavenly court, who was obscure, mysterious, fantastical, and beautiful beyond compare. Qingyu, Yunche murmured softly. Back then, when he headed to Frozen Cloud Asgard, he did not see her. He did not expect that they would actually meet again in a situation like this. And having not seen her for more than a year, the feelings he felt from Xie Qingyu had underwent a very big change. She was still a woman with unearthly beauty, yet a cold pride and a mysterious feeling that could not be described with words were now mixed in as well. In the surroundings of her body, ice spirits were still floating about. However, they were completely different from before. The crystals condensed by the cold air, which was naturally released by the ice spirits before, were beautiful and ethereal. They were ice-cold, yet pleasing to the eyes, but other than having good looks, there were no other uses. However, the ice spirits that were currently floating about around Xie Qingyu seemed as if they were alive, as though every single one of them had a life of its own, ice snow spirits that existed independently. These spirits flew and danced freely, clustering near their owner, as though they were the many stars surrounding the moon. Fairy of Frozen Moon. Xie Qingyu. Why is she here? And she actually completely froze my grandpa's attack from such a long distance. Ling Jie raised his head, staring dumbfoundedly as he uttered out, while sounds of discussion came from his surroundings. Currently, everyone in Blue Wind all knew of the relationship between Xie Qingyu and Yunche. Her sudden appearance caused all of their hearts to stir. Yunche was looking at Xie Qingyu, and Xie Qingyu was looking at him as well. The two of them had once again met each other after being separated heavens apart. Their expressions and feelings carried complications that were hard to describe. After their marriage 3 years ago, this was their second meeting. In their every meeting, they would always feel familiarity and unfamiliarity. He was no longer the Yunche from last time, and she was no longer the Xie Qingyu from back then either. With the rise in strength, naturally, it would be accompanied by the change, or even sublimation in one's state of mind. They would not be able to know if what was currently important to either of them and what they were pursuing were the same as before. Even more so, they would not know if their feelings, which had slightly warmed up in the heavenly base and secret realm, had once again grown cold again due to this separation of heavens apart. Perhaps the answers they had in their hearts were simply a blur. Ling Qianni did not continue attacking Yunche. He raised his head, looked at Xie Qingyu whom he did not know when she appeared, and gave a long sigh. Last year, I had once heard that an absolute stunning disciple had appeared from the Frozen Cloud Asgard. Not only is her talent astonishing, even more so, she has bestowed with great fortune. At just an age of 17, she was already at the 2nd level of the Emperor Profound Realm. Currently, she is actually already at the 4th level of the Emperor Profound Realm. Recalling back then, I used a span of a total of 15 years to leap from the 2nd level to the 4th level of the Emperor Profound Realm, while you had only used less than 2 years. It seems like the era that belongs to me has already completely passed. Your future achievements are something that I can never compare to in my lifetime. Xie Qingyu softly spoke. Senior has wrongly praised, this junior is not worthy. Earlier, this junior has offended you by intervening. I beg for senior's indulgence, and I only hope that senior lets go of Yunche. He is not a treacherous and evil person. Ling Qianni was expressionless. He said with a sigh. You wish to protect Yunche. Is that your personal wish, or is this the Frozen Cloud Asgard's intentions? Episode 51 is end here. Next episode coming tomorrow. Thanks for watching.